Hey everybody, Steve here, Local Level Podcast. I'm sitting here today with Andy Hite. He is a professional business coach. He is, a positive person, somebody that would definitely be beneficial if you're in the business space to maybe reach out and get a little bit of inspiration and some support from him. You can learn more about Andy Hite at andyhitecoaching.com. And Andy, it's a real pleasure to have you on. Thanks.
Thanks for having me, Steve. I'm excited to see where this conversation goes. I appreciate the invitation.
Definitely, yeah. And we had a really good conversation, about a week ago, or maybe it was a little longer than that because we had a couple back and forths. But with coaching, people think a lot of different things. People hear about coaches and they think, well, I can't afford that, or that doesn't work, or that's this and that. Tell us why coaching is important. Give us your case on why people should look into coaching.
I love it. Yeah, there's certainly a lot of opinions out there about coaching. Some of them informed, some of them not. The problem with coaching is it's an unregulated field. So, Steve, you could walk out on the street and say, I'm a transformational coach. Give me 10 grand and let's go. And a lot of that happens a lot and gives the industry a bad name.
Right.
But what I can tell you is coaching is powerful. I like to say nobody needs a coach, but everyone could use a coach.
Right.
I like to work with people who are like super motivated to become the best and to unearth their potential. And that's where coaching can be really powerful. I've seen clients double, triple their revenue. I've seen them go from feeling depressed, for lack of a better word, to just thriving in life. It's a powerful tool, not unlike an athlete coming out of college going into the pros, right? They already have skill sets, they already know what they're doing, but they want to up level their abilities, so they engage the services of a coach. We can do the same thing in life and business.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with a lot of different things. I mean, if you're working out, just having somebody kind of in your corner rooting for you, telling you, hey, go a little further, work a little harder, and it's a lot more rewarding. People want to do what's comfortable a lot of times, so you need somebody to kind of get you out of that comfort zone to succeed. I feel like you got to work your business muscles too sometimes. And
100%. Yeah. It's all about setting oneself up to be able to achieve whatever it is that they want in life. And I'm a firm believer that every one of us, every listener out there has potential that is untapped.
Right.
And I love to work with those that are brave enough to kind of look under the hood to see where they need to make some shifts in order to tap into that potential.
Yeah. And so that's an interesting topic. I mean, looking inside yourself and finding those hidden talents, or, finding the confidence to pursue your dreams. I think that's a lot of things that, a lot of people, maybe there's just hesitation because they're shy, or they're scared, or maybe they failed a few times and they don't want to, look bad again, or, various reasons. What are some of the biggest, obstacles that you have been able to help people overcome to get that success that you're talking about?
Yeah. So with all humans, essentially, there are we come to life with a set of beliefs and attitudes and perspectives. Those are given to us from our childhood, from our parents and our communities, schools, siblings, friends, right? And so a lot of those beliefs, perspectives, attitudes help us in life, but a lot were handed down to us. They're not truly ours, right? And so what we like to do in coaching is to kind of peel away all of those beliefs and thoughts and attitudes that were handed down to really discover who the authentic person is. And when we can do that, we find that things begin to align and their potential starts to blossom. Right.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, so no, I mean, that ties into what you mentioned when we were talking privately, about that there's a kind of like a crossover with counseling, and
Hmm.
it's not the same. Obviously, it's different, but there's a lot of kind of crossover things. There's a lot of things that could, I guess, benefit your mental health with this. Whether it's managing stress or managing expectations and failure and all those things. Because that's what business owners deal with most of the
Yeah.
time. I mean, those are the hurdles, at least for me, and
Hmm.
other people that I've spoken to. So, when you're talking about peeling back the onion, what are the layers that you're getting people to peel off? What are the most burdensome things that people have to deal with, would you say?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring up stress, right? Because stress and anxiety is just fear manifested into an emotional response,
Right.
right? And those fears, which we all have, come from a different genesis, and they kind of control us in many ways.
Hmm.
What we like to do in coaching is if we can kind of shine a light on that fear, or what that stress and what the underlying um, kind of, for lack of a better word, disease.
Yeah.
The stress is just a symptom. We can understand that really it's not as scary as we may think it is. Um, it 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 doesn't have to play out the way, often doesn't play out the way we think
Hmm.
it may.
Right.
So oftentimes just shining a light on it is helpful to kind of demystify those things that cause us stress, right?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, fear is a big thing. Fear of failure, like we say. So with a business owner, and so let's back up a little bit, because I think
Sure.
we're an understanding. That you got to face your fears. That's it's a cliche, but it is for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Um, how did you get to a place where you were able to overcome that personally, so you could get to where you are to be able to kind of expose that for other people, or help them expose it for other people?
It's an excellent question, and I'll just use myself as an example, right? In my 30s, I'm now in my mid 40s. I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit,
Mhm.
but I could never gain a lot of traction. And I was always very confused by that because
Mm.
I think of myself as a relatively intelligent person,
Sure.
um, and able to accomplish a lot. And so I started working with a coach, and we discovered, oddly enough, that, and this was antithetical to anything I thought was possible, that in fact I was afraid of success.
Mm.
And so anytime I got close to it, I would in some ways self-sabotage
Oh
so that
yeah.
I wouldn't get so close. And how we kind of came to that understanding was looking at my childhood, right?
Mhm.
Um, while it wasn't necessarily therapy, it's interesting to see how things play out. Um, for me, when I was a kid, I remember oftentimes, and I think I shared this with you when we spoke.
Mm.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I'd be in the dining room waiting on my dad to come home,
Yeah.
and my mother would always tell me, that he's working late. He'll be home around 9, and I'd be disappointed. And how she would explain it to me was we lived in a nice home, we took nice vacations, and she would say things like, he's just trying to provide a great life for you, and the family. And in my young 7-year-old brain, I kind of equated that to my father was trading his relationships for success,
Mm.
worldly financial success. And in certain ways, I tied those together to think when I got as to become an adult, that if I got too close to that success, I would have to sacrifice relationships.
Wow.
And so, just like we were talking earlier, shining a light on the fear and understanding why that fear is there is so helpful, because then I could realize, oh, I understand this is why I'm ticking the way I'm ticking.
Hmm.
But I know that if I achieve more, my wife and my children aren't going to love me less.
Right.
So
It's
it
not a
gave me
trade-off.
then, that's right, it wasn't a trade off. So it gave me permission to experiment more and more down the road and prove my fears wrong. And
Hmm.
that's a lot of what we do in coaching is we really honor the stress, the anxiety, the worry, the fear, because it's always there
Yeah.
to help us.
Hmm.
And the more we understand what it is and why it's there, the more we can work with it and move beyond it.
Yeah, that's deep. There's a lot of things to unpack in that. Just personally with, kind of having that from your childhood, having it, it's an emotional thing, I mean, you wanted to see your dad, I mean, it's important, as you're growing up, you don't understand, how the world works and, why you can't see him. And it's, I think a lot of times, children in particular will make that about them. There's nothing else in the world other than what I can see. Right.
That's right.
So that is a very powerful thing. And I would imagine that it was pretty difficult to, get to that point and realize that and overcome it. How did that process work for you? Was it just, I had an aha moment, or did you have to work through it? Do you still have to work through it? Let us know about that a little bit.
All of the above.
Right. Okay.
So I was working with a coach at the time, and we were really working more around my points of view around money, and we ended up there. But it was through the coaching that we explored my childhood and what success looked like in my family and what love looked like in my family. And we kind of just stumbled upon it, and it became, as you said, an aha moment. I literally, we were on a Skype call just like this. And I said, "Oh shit. Is it okay if I say?"
Yeah, sure. Say anything you want. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh shit. Maybe I've intertwined those things like a pretzel, and maybe I'm actually scared of losing the people in my life if I gain more." And so that really became an aha moment, as you pointed out. And then systematically over time, just as I said, experimenting, giving myself permission to go a little further, gain more success, and prove to myself that, those that I love aren't leaving, and I'm not leaving them.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. And, I mean, to kind of think about just what's going on today in the world and, all the stresses, the extra stresses that people have, especially, it's one thing if you fail because you failed, but it's another thing if you failed due to, circumstances outside your control. And, there's always some of that, in everything. There's, things happen around you and you have to deal with it. But, now it's like, with this shutdown, you can't, it's illegal to be in business for some people, or, even if you're not necessarily a business owner, but general people just working in offices, working for other people, these same things come into play. So what are some of the things that you have been dealing with your clients? What are some of the, what's some of the feedback that you've gotten, or what are some of the helpful tips that you can kind of, give a free sample to for the people listening?
Sure. And I just kind of want to back up to that word failure, because it ties into your question. I don't like that word.
Okay.
Because it gets thrown around far too much.
Yeah.
When I work with clients and we talk about, for instance, a client who is releasing a new product, so to speak. And if it doesn't land, is that a failure? I posit no, because, I like to look at life, the life of a business, like a tennis match, right?
Right.
Look at how that's scored. You have point, I'm not a tennis player, so I might screw this up a little bit, but you have point, you have
set and match, right?
Set, match, and then game.
Right.
So it is the release of one product, is that the whole game?
Right.
Or is that in fact just a point?
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense.
Simon Sinek has a great book called The Infinite Game. And I like for all of my clients to read it, because what it illustrates is oftentimes we put timelines on our businesses, and what all that does is hurt us.
Yeah.
Because the entrepreneurial spirit is trying things, is putting things out there, experimenting. And if we look at one instance of quote unquote failure and assign that, it does something to our psyche. What I like to just say, it's just a point.
Right.
Yeah. Would Michael Jordan be considered a failure if he only won 5 championships?
Right. Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, it's that's a really good point. I mean, it's almost it's almost so simple that it seems like, oh, we shouldn't even talk about it, but it's people really don't think of that. They think of everything in the right now. They think of, well, I have this goal, and if I have all these, if I really planned well and I wrote the perfect business plan and I, have all my ducks lined up, I'm a failure if it doesn't work according to plan. And it's funny that you say that, because I literally just had a conversation with a friend of mine that he was looking to, without giving too much detail, he was looking to start something new. He wanted to do some sort of online business, and he's not, it's new to him.
Hmm.
He's a very like he needs to have a plan. He's a meticulous type of planning type of person, and kind of sometimes you can get neurotic with that. You set yourself up for failure. And I was kind of just talking him through some of the different things. He was just asking for a little bit of advice, and I was telling him, like, you just have to start doing things. You have to start trying things, because if you plan this all out all the way through, it's never going to add up to what you think it's going to be, because not everything's controllable. The customers have to come to you. Sometimes it's like you can only go so far, and it's hard sometimes because people come from a different type of like world, where like there's guidelines and there's standards and all that. But when in the entrepreneurial space, the people that kind of make waves and do things a little bit more unconventionally are the ones that usually get noticed, a lot more. And I was just I think that's getting back to what you were saying. I think that if you just overplan and you never execute, then you're setting yourself up. You're making a business plan for failure almost. So what do you think about that?
110%. Perfect in my practice is a bad word,
Right.
because I know so many, I'm guilty of it as well. So many entrepreneurs, business people, it's not just in entrepreneurship and in life. We plan so much because we're kind of afraid of what the feedback is going to be,
Right.
that oftentimes we never put the thing out there.
Mm-hmm.
Or we tinker with it so much that it kind of diminishes its power.
Right.
Perfect is the enemy of good.
Hmm.
What I like to tell my clients is get messy.
Mm-hmm.
Come up with an iteration of something and throw it out there. If nothing else, do some market research and test it.
Yeah.
But don't wait until the website is perfect, the business cards are perfect,
Mm-hmm.
the product in your mind is perfect. Get it out into the minds and hands of the consumers and let them tell you.
Right.
Because they always will.
Mm-hmm.
They'll tell you what it needs to be. And so often ideas just stall in an office or in a mind, because we're waiting for that imaginary like light bulb to say, now it's time.
Right. And that never happens. Never happens. Yeah.
Never happens.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I do marketing for a living, and, that's one of the biggest things dealing with people is like, let's figure out what your goals are and let's start trying things. Let's take some actions and see what the results are, so we can fine tune things over time while it's actually out there and it's actually, generating something, whether it's buzz or people hate it or love it. At least, you'll never know unless you try, and I don't like the word try, but it's, sometimes you have to take a few cracks at it,
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look at all the shots, again, going back to Michael Jordan, all the shots that he missed,
Yeah.
all the games that he lost, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If any of those moments caused him any hesitation, he wouldn't be the best of all time.
Mm-hmm.
He went at it with just a passion and pursuit that it's going to happen the way that he planned.
Yeah. And one of the things that just on the Michael Jordan thing, one of the things he always used to do is he would visualize the ball going through the hoop. He'd visualize himself over and over, even when he wasn't physically doing it. And there's something to be said about this. It's that mental conditioning of, just visualizing, in your mind how how does the ball feel in your hands? All those different things. I mean, I don't know I don't even know what book that's from, but it's from something. And
Yeah.
it's really effective. I think they just did a study on that recently. They released something about how, and I'm going to butcher this, but basically just reaffirming what I just said, that it really does make a physical difference in your performance if you visualize before you go to bed. And do you have any experience with that? Do you do any type of exercises with that in your coaching?
100%. What I know to be true is what we think, the thoughts that we think on a daily basis inform our beliefs.
Yeah.
Right. So we're constantly either shifting our beliefs by our thoughts or reaffirming them by our thoughts. And what we believe, we become.
Powerful.
And so going back to your analogy or the visualization is by visualizing, for instance, shooting into a basket, you then believe you have the ability to do it.
Right.
That it's going to happen, that as long as you take motion, it's going in. And so, yes, we talk about that constantly in coaching, with not only visualizing one success, but believing that it's possible.
Yeah.
And in fact, a lot of one of the first things I often talk to people in an initial coaching call is I'll play this NLP game with them. NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. And I'll get them kind of 3 years into the future, imagining what success is like, what it feels like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, where they are. And what happens is they actually start to live in that moment as that person.
That's interesting.
And so they will give a feedback of how that person stands, what self-esteem is like in that person, their belief, their confidence. And what we discover is it's all right there already. It's just their beliefs that kind of put a mask over it. So what we talk about is act as if you are that person 3 years down the road.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Success Cybernetics by U.S. Anderson?
I don't think I have.
If you haven't, put it on your list. It's an older book. It's been around since, I think it was written originally in like the 60s. And U.S. Anderson was a football player turned. He was basically a pioneer in that kind of like the. I know it sounds like. So the cybernetics of it is basically using your mind kind of as running a program, and kind of changing the program running in your mind. And they talk. It's kind of written in short stories. It's a good read if you have a chance. But
I'll pick it up.
Yeah. And that's one of those things, act of it as if. One of the stories in there is about the pecking order, it's kind of like, if you act as if you're the boss, sooner or later you will be the boss, because people will start, treating you as the boss, because that's what you command. It's presence, and there's really is something about that. I think that it's very powerful. Just changing the perspective and kind of like, your mindset is everything that you go into, every thought that comes through your mind. You have your baggage kind of placed into it, and it's packaged in a certain light, and just kind of taking that wrapping off and just repackaging it into something different is all the difference sometimes, the same types of things. So yeah, I love that aspect of the coaching, because it's really hard to, I guess people think it's really hard sometimes to just snap yourself out, so how do you get through to people when you're having these conversations with people? I would assume that people give you some pushback and like, no, that's not gonna, this is not gonna work. I can't just do that. Or are there any type of like emotional responses? Do you get kind of pushback where people aren't willing to accept certain things? Tell me about that type of part of your job.
Yeah, it's an excellent question. I think I'm certain that's possible in coaching. The way that I build my business is I have lots of touch points along the way before a person becomes a client. And so chances are, if a person is coming in with a lot of skepticism and doubt, they probably wouldn't be the client for me. Um, because I really do kind of do a lot of screening for coachability.
Okay.
And it does take a person that is just, as cliche as it may sound, someone that's willing to walk up to the edge and jump.
Wow.
Right? Because that's the entrepreneurial spirit, right? It really is that person that needs to adopt some amount of fearlessness.
Yeah.
To experiment, to put something out in the world without knowing what the response is going to be in return. And coaching is kind of the same way. There needs to be some amount of blind faith.
Yeah, I actually one of the things that really does resonate with me about the coaching thing is the fact that there's a level of skin in the game that you have when you're paying somebody to point you in the right direction and kind of assist you like you are. If I was just talking about somebody about pricing. I think we talked about pricing accordingly. If you give it away for free, it doesn't necessarily have any perceived value. It's whatever. It doesn't matter. I didn't invest anything in this. I'll give it a try. But if you spend $10,000 on something, you're going to try a lot harder. I feel like is that
100%, 100%. It's funny, when I first started coaching, I would take on like friends for free as clients to practice and to also like to want to give to them.
Yeah.
And almost always, if it's free or as you say, there's no skin in the game, it's too easy to let go.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do ask of clients is not only to invest in yourself with time and energy, but with money. Because it does signify your level of commitment. And if you really do believe in yourself and in the work, you'll get a return on that investment.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
For instance, and I have no problem talking about what I spend. Sure. I pay my coach $50,000 a year.
Holy smokes, man. It's a lot. You definitely trust that guy a lot. I don't know if I would do that, but
woman.
Oh, okay. Well, woman, same.
Here's the thing. I mean, I can see it on the bottom line. I wouldn't be where I am, and I wouldn't have the kinds of clients that I do, and all of those things wouldn't happen if I didn't have somebody in my corner challenging me to dig deeper and to find more of that hidden potential.
Yeah.
It's the reason why most Fortune 500 boards get coaches for their C-suites.
Yeah.
And if that doesn't happen, a lot of those C-suites go out and hire coaches on their own because they know it makes a difference.
Yeah.
From Oprah to Bill Gates to you name them, they all have coaches.
Yeah. I mean, they're, like you said in the beginning, they're not all created equal, obviously. Some are better than others. And I guess it's really, I feel like there's probably a personality thing in there too. Even if it's a really good coach for this person, might not resonate with a different person. But I agree. And, we have had, not on this show, but my partner on his other show interviewed several coaches. We also went down to 10X GrowthCon in Miami a couple of years back, to see the live, Grant Cardone and all that stuff. And, you can tell some of the people are kind of greasy. It's kind of like, hey, look at what I'm getting this guy to pay me type of thing. And that's not cool. But, there are some really serious stories, that I totally believe, and I've seen actual changes in people, from working with somebody and especially in, I think, group environments where it's like a mastermind type of group. Not only is it a one-on-one type of coach, which I feel would be really beneficial for certain things, but to have that group accountability, kind of that check-in, people are kind of doing it together. Do you do anything like that?
I do. I have a group called 3C Crew. 3C standing for confidence, courage, confidence, and creativity. And there's about 10 people in that group. We meet once a week. And I'm also looking to put together the beginning of 21, a mastermind group of about 5 to 6 men and women. Because I agree with you. I'm in a mastermind as well. They are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
If you get in a group of like-minded people who push one another, I can literally point to various things in my business that have been success as a direct result of that mastermind group.
Yeah. Yeah. When it's actually real and it pays off and you can actually, you can see the results and the return. And not only that, but you have good relationships with people that, they don't go away. When you kind of accomplish something together, it's fun to check in and see how it's working out for other people. So, no, I think that's it's a really important thing. Now, I mean, aside from just a mastermind group, what are your thoughts on just general networking groups? Around communities. What do you have any pointers or tips? That people maybe are, if they're thinking about that. I know there's not as many of them now because things are closed down, but you can still find them if you look hard enough. What would you suggest people look for?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I'm a huge advocate of networking. I certainly miss in-person networking.
Yeah.
But I'm an odd person. I'm a very introverted person, but I enjoy networking. I'm a part of 2 groups, and I do have very strong thoughts on what good networking is and isn't. I really believe that when folks go to networking, that they not go and enter into a conversation as we are now, trying to sell something to the other person.
Yeah.
A lot of people do that, and it's sleazy. It doesn't feel good for anybody.
Yeah.
And isn't the true nature of what good networking is. My belief is really being in a conversation where you can create meaningful relationships with people that then you become a support to one another, whether that's referrals or information and resources. But the more people that we have in our network, so to speak, that can support us, that believe in us, that frankly just like us, the more powerful our network becomes.
Yeah.
We've all gone to those networking events where somebody walks up, asks what you do, and they immediately want to tell you about their product. And if they get a sense at all that you're not interested, you're dead to them. They walk away.
Right. Yeah,
and I believe they're not there in a year.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, yeah, for probably from their own doing, but also from the other people's, not ever buying what they're selling. But yeah, that is something that I find. I think like you hit it on the head. I mean, everybody kind of knows the hard, fast pitch every single time type of thing. And I think I've been guilty of it. I'm not going to lie. I've done that. And I always like, man, I shouldn't have done that. I feel like now with so many different things that we have, especially like when we're trying to, find a networking group, or we're trying to find some way to market our product, or, if we have a friend that we're trying to promote, there's just there's so many options out there. How do you sort those out? Like, do you come to a coach? Would you help somebody find another networking group? What are some of the things to navigate for, I'm throwing stuff out there because this is all interesting stuff. I'm an introvert too. I do this podcast, and, I used to do this podcast in person. And that was the most networking that I would do, to be honest with you, because I'm a digital person. But I don't know. What's your recommendation for people that are kind of, I don't know what to do, I don't know anything about it? What do you think?
I think the thing to do is to have as many conversations as you can. And I almost encourage people to do it without talking about their business. Listen.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Ask questions and listen. There's, now that the world is shrinking, and since COVID, it's shrunk even more because, we can talk to anyone around the world from our living room. And so when people go out to find a business to patronize, whatever it is that they need, the options are endless.
Yeah.
And so what ends up happening is people have so many choices that they can choose to do business with, everyone's heard this, but people they know, like, and trust. And so I firmly believe our job as entrepreneurs, as business people, is first and foremost to be a person that people know, like, and trust. And when that happens, the door then becomes open to talk about your service, your product, what it is that you do. But I always lead with asking about them. And I can give you a really practical thing that I do all the time that I started maybe 3 months ago. And I've gotten more one-on-one conversations from this than almost anything else I've done. On LinkedIn, I will find people that are connected to people that I know and that seem like they may be inspirational to me or a good fit for my business, right? And I will ask them to connect, and those that connect, I take my phone and I record a 60-second hello. Never once do I mention what I do or what they could do for me or offer to do anything for them. I literally say something like, hey, I'm so glad that we're connected. Just want to kind of put a personal message out there to put a face and a voice to a little icon on the screen.
Right.
I hope all is well with you, and I hope one day our paths will cross. And that's it.
That's
and
powerful.
People are so floored by that it's a genuine, simple hello that people respond and say, hey, you want to have a virtual coffee? Opposed to and we've all gotten them. I'm sure you've gotten many too. Hey, this is what I do. If you ever need any help in this area, right, contact me.
Yeah.
And you always delete it, don't you?
Yeah. I don't even know. I honestly, I don't even open their messages on LinkedIn anymore because the inbox is just full of those. I'll occasionally do it to clear it out, and I'll browse through them quickly. I at least give people, like, is this person actually speaking to me or is this a robot? And it's hard with LinkedIn, I think, a lot of times, because there is that you figured out that's a great technique. That's a great, I would honestly reply to that because I would be impressed that you actually took the time and it's not just an automated bot that is, you're sending out to everybody in the area. But yeah, there are so many of those bots that it almost cheapens that experience a lot of times because there's just so much. There's so much.
And the thing to highlight in that is the reason it's pseudo successful is because it's just real and personal and authentic, and not wanting something.
Right.
People are so tired of getting the knock of, hey, can I sell you my vacuum cleaner? No, I don't want your vacuum cleaner.
Right. Yeah.
And so when it is actual, just an honest human connection, people it's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. Yeah, that's powerful. That is something that I think people know that because they feel that, but it's hard to, act that way when you're, being mindful of how you're coming across and what you're actually doing, because the training, the techniques that people, like all the old school techniques is, here's my product, here's this and that, so
cold call.
Right. Smile and dial. Yeah. And it's just a numbers game, and that is saturated. That type of approach is tired, and I think that's really great advice.
So
definitely.
I hadn't done it for a while, but yesterday I sent out, and if anybody's listening and they don't feel like they're special and they're learning that I've done this to like 100 people, I apologize, but I did want to reach out to you specifically. But yesterday, I think I sent out 20 to 25 greetings, each one made individual for that person. I read up on their bio, what they do. I make sure that if it's a name that's unique, that I've done some research and can pronounce it correctly.
Yeah, it's hard.
And I probably sent out 20 to 25 and got 4 requests for a coffee.
Yeah, That's great. I mean, and I bet you that those conversations will be enlightening for both sides. You'll learn something,
Yeah.
they'll learn
And
something. There's no
and
obligation.
here's the thing. Oftentimes, the person that I'm talking to, even in that coffee, they're not the client for me, but what we're doing through networking is we're just planting seeds,
Yeah.
and then I'll get a call and say, oh, you and I, we met, we had a great conversation. In fact, my brother is starting a new business. Would you talk with him? I'm like, hell yeah, I'd
Yeah,
love to talk with him. And
definitely.
even in my business, I think I mentioned this to you, I spend 2 to 4 hours with a potential client, before I'll even allow us to talk about working together, because I want to make sure that that person is excited.
Yeah.
They've experienced what coaching is and what it can be. And I also kind of like to, as we talked earlier, screen out the people that aren't going to be game to play.
Yeah. How do you?
So there's many touch points along the way.
Yeah, and I can see that. I mean, your time is valuable, and you don't want to be if you don't get the sense that what you're going to do is not is going to get across. If you don't feel like you're going to accomplish, then it's not worth your time either. So I get that. What are some of the biggest red flags that you get from people besides just I don't trust coaches? What's your pitch? Obviously that would be a big red flag for you, I'd figure, but what
Yeah.
are some of the little ones that you don't necessarily think of a lot of times?
Um, I find that the most coachable people are people that take 100% ownership of the quality of their life and their work,
Mm-hmm.
and they're just looking to up level those. I find that when people blame the world, when
Mm-hmm.
people
Yeah.
blame a partner, when people blame the economy, when people find blame, um, they're still not taking full ownership of their situation, and typically, not always, but typically they're less coachable.
Yeah.
Um, there are a lot of times when a person can make that shift, though, when they realize, oh yeah, that's right, I'm blaming external circumstances
Yeah.
for my internal reality. Um, and it's really powerful when a person can make that shift.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a huge game changer. I mean, once you stop blaming everybody but yourself, you know, uh, you're in good shape. I mean, that's one of the biggest steps you can take. I know that. I mean, I when I was young, young teenager and stuff, everybody, I think we talked about childhoods.
Mm-hmm.
Your childhood, you bring a lot of these things in. Maybe something did happen to you, and when you're a kid, it is other people's fault a lot of times. But when you grow up and you don't start realizing, well, hey, I'm in control of my life now. I have the ability to make the decisions that affect my life totally, for the most part, right?
Yeah.
But once you do that, it opens so many different doors for you, like just in your mind, and you view the world in a different light. Um, how many people have you I guess you say you kind of weed that out at the beginning, but have you had those transformative like aha moments happen a lot with your clients? I mean, can you tell us about some of the success stories, some of the breakthroughs, to kind of give us a sense of like how powerful this actually can be, if you allow it to be?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. I can come up with probably several examples. I have one client, a past client. Um, he was a financial services provider. Um, in terms of clients, one of the best, had a book of a lot of clients, but in terms of dollars managed, was middle of the road. And I really wanted to kind of figure out why that was. And so through the course of our coaching, we realized he had an unconscious bias against a certain demographic.
Hmm.
The demographic that he was certainly very comfortable with, he did very well with. But when it came to type A, C-suite type men, it wasn't something that he was necessarily conscious of that he was uncomfortable around. So when we kind of dug beneath the hood a bit and discovered that, we created a plan to sort of face those discomforts. And within a month, started signing more of those clients, and his book of business really took off just by discovering one small unconscious bias.
Right.
I had another client who came to me because he was feeling very overwhelmed and alone. Those of us that are entrepreneurs know all too well that it's a lonely field. You know, when things go wrong, when things are stressful, there's nobody to turn to. There's nobody to delegate to, or there's no one to go above and say, I need help. Right.
Yeah.
And so he was experiencing a lot of that. And he was just thinking, you know, he had his ideas of why he was feeling overwhelmed. But what we discovered was he had two of his core values were service and freedom, and which had nothing to do with any part of the business. He was the kind of person that he couldn't say no.
Yeah.
So when people would come to him wanting his help, he would always say yes, because that was a major core value for him. But what he didn't realize was by honoring that core value, he was dishonoring his value of freedom, which threw off the entire system, and it made him constantly feel overwhelmed. And by putting in some structure of boundaries, he was able to honor both.
Wow.
Both be of service and have the freedom that he desired. And so it really freed up the system for him, that he no longer felt stressed and overwhelmed and that kind of thing. I mean, there's just a couple of examples.
Yeah, those are great examples.
Tons of them.
Yeah. I mean, it's everybody's got an example, I figure, if you can get to it, right?
Yeah.
It's man, that is powerful stuff. It's definitely something that I know is just like, you know, we talked about with counseling, and I know you kind of tell us a little bit about what you told me on the phone about the counseling versus the coaching, and kind of why you went down this path.
And in terms of what coaching is and isn't?
Yeah, right. I guess like we were talking about that you felt, I remember you were saying that you kind of felt like maybe getting into counseling, maybe psychology would have been your path.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Yeah. So how I got into coaching was about 7 years ago. I was doing some deep work with a therapist, and she looked over at me one day and she goes, I really think you should consider being a therapist, because you think like a therapist. You understand how previous childhood and teenage years and things inform how people show up. And I was really flattered by that. Since my early 20s, I've been just a devout devourer, or is that a word? I would devour
it is now.
Personal development. It is now, right?
Yeah.
So I kind of loved that idea. And I went away and I did some research, and I was like, oh, hell no. I'm not going back to school for 6 years. At the time, the average salary for a psychotherapist it wouldn't have kind of served my family with what I was doing at the time. So I just kind of tabled it. 3 years later, I'm working with another therapist who oddly said the same thing. And so I'm telling myself that, you know, the universe is saying something. It's pointing me in a direction, but I don't understand it, which is a great lesson for me to learn, because I can be helpful to my clients in that way. Just be open.
Yeah.
Right. It's not always obvious when the signs, the information comes in. Just be open. So fast forward a little bit more time, I'm working with a coach because it was new to me and I wanted to experience it. And I made incredible strides. That's where I discovered my fear of success. And so I got really excited by it. And I was looking at what I was paying that coach, and I thought, this might be something to explore.
Sure.
And so, yeah, I went away and got certified, figured I'd kind of try it on, and got my first client and never looked back. I mean, I immediately sort of told my wife, I'm like, oh, hell, we might have to think about a career shift and that kind of thing. So we just sort of set the ball in motion for it all to happen.
Well, I'll tell you, I mean, I have conversations with people, recorded or not recorded, all the time, different walks of life, different industries, and you definitely have an energy to you that I feel. I feel that energy. You definitely have a lot of positivity and helpful thoughts. I know that I've spoken to some coaches before that I was like, well, this is not even fun talking to you, you totally different.
Dad, I'm not that.
Yeah. You're not that person with, somebody totally no energy whatsoever. You are the opposite. You are definitely somebody that I would, consider recommending and maybe even I'll contact you for some coaching. But I definitely, want to respect your time. This hour always goes by so quickly. But
I'm free, my friend.
Well, I definitely want to let everybody reach out to you and contact you. So the best place to reach you, AndyHiteCoaching.com, and anywhere else, anything else that you want to leave for the audience. Now's your time.
Actually, I appreciate that. I also run for anyone interested in just like being a part of my community. I have a Facebook group called Entrepreneur Success Principles. It's a free group. I very rarely, I can't say that I never do, but I very rarely sell or hawk anywheres in there. It's just inspiration, conversation. It's a great group right now of about 260 strong, and would love to have any of your listeners pop over and see if it's a fit, a community fit.
Definitely. Yeah. We'll definitely link to that. We'll put all the links in the information. And, Andy, it's a real pleasure talking to you. I appreciate all your time.
Likewise.
And,
likewise.
For anybody else, like I say, Andy Hite, AndyHiteCoaching.com, check him out. And it's a pleasure. I'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Steve.